Meet Reed Lance Rosenthal, rancher, #1 best-selling award-winning author, and unabashedly, unapologetically on the right side of the outstanding issues of our generation. But don't try to fence him in. Sometimes his positions will surprise you, because Reed is definitely his own man, with his own opinions. You might love him, you might hate him, but you won't be able to stop listening. Step over to the right side with Reed.
Howdy, podcast listeners and video viewers across the globe, the Gulf to Canada, and throughout the United States. This is Reed Lance Rosenthal on the right side, and the Cowboys Take, if you're watching my ugly moth flap its lips on video. And this is our first show of a week that I haven't done AM radio across the country in more than 10 years. I kind of miss it, but you know what? Doing this show kind of brought home the point that that was a good decision, because this was a lot easier to do. So before we get into the show, let me just acquaint you with how we're thinking of kind of conducting stuff from here on in. Number one, and by the way, I really want your input. I value all you listeners. Thank you, all you folks who have come over from AM and are listening to me or watching me whenever you can. I appreciate it a bunch, and I love you guys as an AM audience for more than a decade. This is a critical time for our country, and it's the only reason I do this show. It's the only reason I started this show back there when Barack Obama, America lover that he is, was president. And I want you to know that what I'm trying to do here is bring you information, because if you have information, particularly information that's being hidden from you or omitted by the mainstream media, which is like most of it, and particularly the most important parts you need to know to make a decision, then you can't make a good decision. It's just that simple. And you can't get prepared for what might be coming our way on a whole bunch of fronts, geopolitically, economically, financially, relative to the physical safety of you and your family, and I can go on with the list. I mean, you're kind of familiar with it. So what I'm planning to do here, and I want your input, you can put your comments in the bottom, the comment section here below. Remember, this video is kind of new for us. Please throw a like our way on the show and subscribe. That really, really, really helps us. And the more people we reach, I think, the more this country will be helped. And don't feel bashful about sending this link out to your friends and asking them to send it out if you like the content or a portion of the content catches your interest. As always, as we have done for the last 10 years, we're going to keep up our website on the rightsideradio.com, on the rightsideradio.com. Host of articles, great archives. You can listen to the old AM radio shows on various topics, historical stories, the history of money, the history of the Federal Reserve, the real history of the Declaration of Independence, the history of CBDC introduction, which is underway. Basically about the history of everything, including the history of the rise and fall of empires. I think it was a 4-part show. It was pretty fascinating. It was fascinating to do. And the similarities, unfortunately, to the empires of yesteryear and the United States of America right now are frighteningly similar, very similar. But we can do something about it. If we're informed, we make the plans, we carry out the plan, and we take the actions that are needed. And on the rightsideradio.com has a whole bunch of articles posted every week that back up everything I'm bringing you. You can read the details because I don't have the time, and you don't want to sit here and drink your beer and listen to me add on infinitum. So whatever catches your fancy, you can find on the web under the various categories. We have really, really big pages with bundles of information. That's the links in the upper right-hand corner of the homepage. We have a COVID page, COVID litigation page, a Ukraine page, an election fraud page, a Trump assassination attempt. I'm being kind. conspiracy page, and a host of other things, which brings you really into the details and has, in some cases, hundreds, if not thousands, of articles from all sorts of sources and all sorts of viewpoints. So once again, you're informed and you can make a decision. Use that resource. Pass out that link to folks. You will be helping your country. You really will. Yep. Informed citizens of the United States. Well, today we're going to talk about, number one, some international stuff, which is being covered only so lightly by mainstream media, big surprise, that affects you and may affect what's going to happen here in the next 2 or 3 weeks, which might not be so great, shall we just say. And I'm using measured understatement to bring you that message, as you will see. We're going to talk about the Brics countries. We've talked about them a number of times. I've brought you the history of the Brics countries. It's in the archives on the rightsideradio.com. But I warned you a few months ago to be watching out for October because they're having a big confab. Their mutual goal, despite many of them don't like each other, is to get rid of the United States dollar. And, you know, if the United States goes away as a consequence, well, oh well, too bad. So sad, you know. Some of them would like to see the United States go away permanently. China, Russia, Iran, all members of the Brics, or soon to be members of the Brics. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. We're going to talk about it more on the next show, which brings me to how we're going to try and format this. Rather than one longer show, hour plus or minus on video and 45 minutes after all the breaks and stuff on AM radio, I'm going to try and bring you 2 shorter shows, except when we have interviews with great folks like we've already had, and, shall we say, long-winded topics that need further time. I'm going to continue with the historical story in most shows. For instance, the next story this week, or actually the first of next week, will be the history of pension plans in the United States. Because the pension plans, folks, are a big blow up waiting to pop. And you folks who are relying on a pension plan, you need to know what's going on because, unfortunately, I think you're going to be disappointed. I hope I'm wrong. But this week, we're doing the Brics. We're doing the international. We are going to talk about this incredible thing that's going on in the Carolinas, which is not being covered by mainstream media at all, which is not being responded to really by the federal government at all. But people are starving. People are dying. There's bodies in the street. I'm not making this up. We have a host of videos that you need to watch. This is on the scene. Mainstream media isn't saying a word about this. And I'll bring you some really interesting coincidences about this sudden, unanticipated, havoc-wrecking killer storm that suddenly appeared, you know, like out of thin air, and happened to hit, red areas, a month before the election. Well, let me bring you all the dots. You can connect them. So let's get going, shall we? But before we get into the show, we're going to stick with our traditions on this video and podcast only new format. The rant story and the founder's quote. And on the founder's quote, I think it apropos to this particular, shall we say, inaugural of type show. This is James Madison, great patriot, by the way. A popular government without popular information or the means of acquiring it is but a prologue to a farce or a tragedy, or perhaps both. We're kind of seeing that play out right now, folks, aren't we? Pass on this link and others from other outfits like it. On the rant story, simple today, short and sweet. You know, fall and autumn has always been my favorite time of year for all sorts of reasons. I love the weather, I love the sun, I love really the lack of clouds, big blue skies, breezes wafting cool and chilly air through the grasses and the gently falling and turning color leaves. It's a magical time of year. And it doesn't last very long out in this neck of the woods. In fact, it doesn't last very long in a lot of places around the country. So it's a very special, very limited time of year. So get outside and enjoy it, because I want you to think about something. The only thing that is finite is time. And no matter how long you are on the planet Earth, let's say you live to be 80 or 90 or 50 or whatever, that's the number of autumns you have to enjoy. And each one squandered is one you'll never get back. Go out and enjoy it. It'll help your soul. And right now, all our souls need a little help. And now, let's get into international. The international mess, shall we? Israel. They got pounded by about 200 Iranian missiles night before last. They say that they shot them all down. All you got to do is watch the videos. They didn't shoot them all down. What's interesting is that Iran didn't have big warheads in those missiles. In fact, in some, they didn't have any. It was like they were sending a message. But the end result is that this has given Israel license to make a major strike on Iran, and they will. Okay, this was last night. I'm recording this on a Thursday. Yes, on a Thursday. Last night was Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year's, the most important, should we say the most joyous holiday on the Jewish calendar. And all this is significant. October 7th, just a few days from now, maybe the day you're listening or watching this, is the anniversary of the Hamas attack, which killed 1,200 Israelis, screwed up a whole bunch more, and resulted so far in the death of about half of 200 plus hostages. Very few have been returned. So this is a very significant time. And if you look back in history, the significant wars in the Mideast usually start in October. So keep that in mind. So you can expect a pretty massive, impactful response by Israel. The unknown is, what's Iran going to do with that? Iran, by the way, their army, although number of people in it, even the exalted guard, which is the cream of their crop in the army, is not well equipped for a ground war. In other words, a conventional war is not their forte. They've been fighting this war on an asymmetric front through their proxies, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, who nobody can seem to stamp out. They're tough folks. But this is direct now between Iran and Israel, which could lead to direct confrontation between Russia, China, and the United States. Hopefully not, but that's where it could go, depending upon which course it takes. So I think that that's coming. I can't tell you when it's coming. I think it'll be coming soon, particularly with the historical significance of this early part of October that I just gave to you, at least in broad brush form. Then we have Ukraine. Ukraine has just developed a long range, like 1,000 plus miles, missile. And they have announced, using America's money to run their government and fund their pensions, along with finance their beleaguered army, they've announced that they're going to be using those missiles against Russia. You know, and I'm sure Vladimir Putin won't mind getting bombarded 1,000 miles, give or take, from the Ukrainian border. No problem there. And, you know, I mean, he's just a pussycat. Don't worry about him. And runs the largest nuclear arsenal on the planet Earth. No problem here. So you haven't heard about that. And there's other things bubbling in Ukraine you haven't heard about too. Going to bring them to you at the end of the week. The bottom line is that the international front, despite the gloss over by MSM and the omissions, and the continuing lies by the Biden-Harris-Obama third-term administration, is anything but a powder keg, okay? Hopefully you have prepared, and when you watch these videos and listen to what I'm going to tell you about this devastation in the mountains of the Carolinas from this storm, people with no gas, no generators, no heat, no power, no food, no water, and no help. You'll understand what I mean about being at least semi-prepared. You owe it to yourself, you owe it to your family, and you know what? You owe it to your country. So if you haven't done it, at least get started, please. And we have a preparedness page on ontherightsideradio.com. It's another of those links in the upper right-hand corner. Take a look at it. We're adding to it all the time. Might give you some good ideas, might give you some good warnings, might give you something to think about. It might save your life. It might save your property. It might save your family. And it might save your country. All right, let's go to this bizarre thing. And you really must watch the videos. They're under treason, which is where they belong. They're under rat-a-tat-tat on the homepage, and they're under the audio bar and family safety. I got them all over the place. Of what's really going on the ground in the Carolinas. It is heart-wrenching. It is shocking. Your jaw will hit the table, and you aren't hearing about it anywhere. So to put this in context, we sent about $8 billion over the last couple of months of our tax money to Ukraine and Israel. I think Israel deserves part of it. I don't know. I'm not going to go into that whole scene right now. Ukraine doesn't deserve any of it. You know my standpoint on that. This was an avoidable war started by the United States and their policies, and really was kindled in 2014 under Barry Obama and the overthrow of the elected government in Ukraine and the installation of a Barry Obama Western world puppet, which didn't particularly please Putin, who promptly took back Crimea, and Barry did nothing. It's amazing how history kind of repeats. If you want to have an interesting thing, and maybe I'll bring you the story, check out the events that led to World War I. You'll see some pretty stark similarities here. All right, so you have what's called the Spartan Shield. And the Spartan Shield is it's kind of a shield for all things that go wrong terribly, that are not expected. And supposedly, this is supposed to be in force and effect throughout the country for disaster management through FEMA, etc. The Southeast National Guard, Tennessee, the North Carolinas, were shipped over the last several months out to the Mideast. So there's way less prepared, fully trained National Guard in those afflicted areas. Maybe a coincidence. The storm which came in, Helene, it was a Category 1, which is really not much of a storm, but noticeable, when it was approaching the coast, originally of Florida. And it intensified, some say to 4, some say to 5, the maximum strength, right offshore. Very unusual occurrence. Kind of like that hurricane that hit the Gulf side of Florida last year. So these are unusual weather events. We know that there's weather manipulation and that it can be extreme. I'm going to post for you, or I'm going to have the producers post for you today, again, a video called The Dimming. It is fascinating, and it is scary, and it will give you a whole different perspective on weather. And I urge you to go to ontherightsideradio.com, type in the archives history of weather manipulation, and read that. All as a backdrop to these tidbits I'm bringing you. Number of stories and videos on the website. So what this has affected, folks, besides killing a whole bunch of people, I think the death toll will be in the thousands, is that their entire community is stranded. People are trying to move goods and services by horse or donkey or cart. Volunteers that are flying planes and helicopters, or otherwise trying to deliver goods through trucks where there are still roads or partial roads available, are being turned away by people who claim to be high local officials, I doubt it, and FEMA officials. In fact, they're being threatened with arrest. Pretty odd in this heavily red area of the country a month before the election. Pretty odd for any situation in any area of the country at any time. So you can kind of put that little dot in your mind. At the same time, the International Teamsters Union, who, by the way, supports Barry Obama's third term and his fourth term in the form of Kamala Harris, suddenly decides that they're going to go on strike October 1, just a few days ago. That's 45,000 Teamsters on the East Coast and the Gulf Coast, handling about 50%, give or take, of total trade goods coming into and out of the United States. You think that will have any effect on inflation? Do you think that will have any impact on prices? Do you think that will have any impact on the economy? All rather odd coincidence, don't you think? Because at the same time, this devastation in the Southeast has wiped out tens of thousands of heads of livestock, wiped out family farms which have been in operation almost since the Revolutionary War, wiped out a bunch of crops, a bunch of cotton, you know, what your clothes are made of, and a bunch of other natural resources. But there's more, like a bad night infomercial. We've now learned that BlackRock, you know, our friend BlackRock, yeah, the non-bank bank with 12 trillion in assets that owns hundreds of thousands of housing units across the United States, driving up your housing costs. That BlackRock. It seems that BlackRock has invested money in a lithium play. And I'm going to bring you more on this. I have the name of the company, Piedmont, who has been trying to buy land in this area because there's huge, they say, lithium deposits under it, except that most of the folks in that area don't want to sell. Now there's reports, I have not confirmed them, I'll bring you more on the next show, which will be Monday, Tuesday. Now there's reports that entire towns are being bulldozed and people are being told to stay out. What does this remind you of? Oh, that's right, Lahaina, Hawaii. In this case, water, and in that case, fire. But same approach, same result, right? If somebody's not going to sell to you, if you wipe them out, wipe out their buildings, wipe out their possessions, wipe out their livelihood, gee, I guess they're going to sell to you, aren't they? So something really smelly, really fishy, no pun intended at all, is going on down there in the Southeast. I'm going to bring you a lot more on this, and I think there's a lot more coming. And one of the key things that will tell you that there is something going on is the extreme measures the MSM will go to avoid talking about it. Kind of like the attempts on Trump, you know, the assassination attempts on Trump. Or kind of like the vanquishment, the total debunking of the Russia collusion theory, which most folks on the left, because they're useful idiots, most folks on the left think is still the truth. It's unbelievable. Of course, that's what happens when you listen to MSNBC, NBC, CNN, and the rest of the yahoos. So please look at these videos. And by the way, while we spent $8 billion to prop up Ukraine and Israel in the last few months, there is very little FEMA down there, no military, no National Guard helping these people out. The private help is being turned away, as I told you, under threat of arrest, no less. And Biden comes out and says, oh, we're so sorry about all this devastation, and Americans will have to pitch in to help. Well, really? I thought Americans paid taxes to the federal government whose mission was, and limited to, along with several other critical missions in the Constitution, to provide that help just in this kind of situation. So why isn't it there? I'll let you connect the dots. So that, folks, oh, and the Brics, I forgot to tell you. Oh, actually, I forgot to tell you something else, which relates to this mess down there. There's a whole bunch of reports of looting of partially destroyed buildings or demolished areas by, guess who? Illegal aliens. And who brought that fun stuff to our shores? Right? Obama's third term, Harris Biden. Yeah. And during the course of all this, because it gets buried, you know, by other news, which is always the plan, the DHS has admitted that 700,000, that's 700,000, illegal alien criminals were allowed in the country and they don't know where they are. And we're not talking about a purse snatcher. We're not talking about somebody from Guatemala who snatched a piece of or a stick of gum or a pack of gum from a convenience store. We're talking about murderers, rapists, thieves, and violent people. 700,000, and they don't know where they are. Okay, well, some of them might be in the Carolinas, taking apart what's left of people's possessions while the government keeps them out of their town and says they're going to bulldoze it and condemn it. Say what? You don't think I'm kidding? Look at the videos and the articles on the website, okay? And there's a lot more coming out. We're going to keep adding to it. As to the Brics, B-R-I-C-S, the Brics countries, right? Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, with a host more that have joined, including Saudi Arabia and the rest, right? The petrodollar. Well, the BRICS countries, as I told you a few months ago, are meeting in October. They may announce a gold-backed rival currency called the unit to the dollar, or they may kind of play the game, you know, and just kind of mention it. Say we're not ready yet, but it's coming in the future. Either one will throw the markets into disarray and affect your personal finances, whether or not they announce it or whether or not they hint that we'll announce it soon when we're ready. It's coming at us. It's coming at the dollar. And our vaunted government continues to use the dollar as a weapon, further not only devaluing the dollar, but completely eroding the trust of the rest of the world in the dollar as reserve currency. This is going to have huge consequences. I have several videos on the website about that too, under economy, family safety, and preparedness. So this is Reed Lance Rosenthal on the Right Side Radio, very first video, very first podcast after exiting AM with a sniffle, I might add. And thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Hit the subscribe, hit the like, really appreciate it. Pass this on. It's not only appreciated, I think it's critical for this and other shows like it that are bringing you information you can't get anywhere else, to get out to as many people as possible and get around the censorship that is occurring rampantly throughout the web as the drum beats toward the election a month from now. And I don't need to tell you, I hope you're registered. I hope you vote. I hope you bring 10 people. I hope you make 10 friends register. This is a big deal, folks. Time to get off the couch. Take a look at our Take Action page and recommended endorsement contribution page. Also, those links are on the home page of On the Right Side Radio. A bunch of 10x multiples. You put in $10, you just contribute $100 to a campaign or a series of campaigns. This is it. There's 30 days left. There's no time to think about it. Do it. For you, for your family, for your country, and for freedom. You keep the wind at your back, and we'll talk to you in a few days. Give me your comments on 2 shows a week of shorter duration. As always, love you. Thanks for listening.
Please remember, if you've missed any shows, just click on Show Archive and you'll find all of his shows. We look forward to seeing you here again next week for another episode of Reed Lance Rosenthal on the Right Side.